see the world through other people's eyes. Now, empathy is a quality of character that can change the world.
What unites people? Armies, gold, flags, stories. There's nothing in the world more powerful than a good story. Nothing can stop it.
If you want to stand out from everybody else, you need to get into storytelling.
Draw a different frame around the same set of circumstances and new pathways come into view.
Welcome to Artefact Live with me, Scott MacArthur, where we look at the art and science of story. We don't care who you are, whether you're a bricklayer, a professor or a speaker, all we care about is you being a good storyteller.
Thank God the drummers arrived.
It's time to realise that facts tell, but it's stories that sell.
Get me some nasty and get it now or someone's getting shot.
And that's a niche of a niche of a niche of a niche of a niche. 1,000 comments.
Selling a hemorrhoid cream to someone who's got hemorrhoids.
Got a whip.
I was born into a deep contradiction.
This stuff's magic.
God, that's so clever.
Good afternoon and welcome to Artefact Live with me, Scott MacArthur.
And me, Paul Crick. Hello.
How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
I'm okay actually. I'm
Good.
okay. I've had quite a good few days. I mean, I'm not health wise. It's not great, but still had quite a good few days. I've had some good fun with in my other world. My music stuff's been going really, really well. So that's been good. I've enjoyed that.
Brilliant.
It's fun. Yeah, it's amazing how, I know I've said this on the show before, but I've got 12,000 people in a Facebook group, and it's so cool. When you post a post up there, and suddenly you get 500 people replying to you, telling stories about their lives, and and 50-year-old women arguing with 50-year-old men that the Jam were better than the Stranglers.
See, we never leave the playground, really, do we?
Oh, it's so cool. Yeah, it's so cool. I love these people. And I know some of them watch this, so it's quite nice. And yeah, it's so cool. So what have you been up to this week?
So I'm preparing I'm preparing to deliver a series of 6 lectures, webinar type things for one of the large consultancies, and I've been racking my brains hard trying to think about how to translate something that is quite ethereal and to actually bring that in the real world. And I think I've found an answer.
Excellent. Right.
So I'm just it involves James Brown and some music psychology. So it's real left field stuff. So I know I'm on the right track, which is great.
I've been playing with trying to bring 2 or 3 of my passions together. I'm getting asked to do keynotes again, thank goodness, Paul. And it's in fact, let me show this is a stinger, right? It's only 15 seconds long. Wait, you see what you think of this. This is quite funny. I thought I'd play it just to see. People know I'm a bit eccentric with these things, but I think you'll get what I'm doing. Wait, you see this.
All right. I love that, just particularly in light of the conversation we had just before we came on air. So it's fabulous. It really represents what you're all about.
Absolutely, and I've got this vision of it's quite a big keynote, the one I'm preparing for, and I'd love one of those big arc lights, a dark room.
Yeah.
and then shine that art light right over the room, as a metaphor for what I'm about to talk about. Oh, that'd be
That'd be
such
great.
good fun. Totally possible as well. It's not,
Yeah.
so, and the butterfly means something, but I don't tend to tell people until I do my talks about what that actually means.
Well, hang on to that, and then that will keep
yeah.
everyone in
Absolutely.
suspense.
So this week, well, hold on. Last week, Layla, what a lovely guest.
She's
What a lovely
fabulous, isn't
guest.
she?
And thank you very much for inviting her onto the show. And I'm delighted
My
she said
pleasure.
yes.
Yeah.
And that little short, I don't know if you saw it. I did a little short of part of her story about the drum, the horse.
The drum's fantastic, isn't it?
Drum, yeah. And you should sample that, mate. There was a
I'm going
really
to.
nice sound to that.
Yeah.
I think I noticed there was a large crystal at the back as well that I never even dared go near because my scientific
that might have
sensibility
started all
couldn't cope
sorts
with
of
it.
things. Yeah.
It would have been too much for me. But yeah, when crystals appear, I always get very, very dodgy and wary about people. But no, it was excellent. I really enjoyed it, and I hope we get a chance to work with her actually because it was that good. I thought she was excellent.
No, I'm lucky to have trained with Layla, and I also have delivered a few things on some of her client work. So she's a joy to be around.
No, she is. There's something about her, really special person. Yeah. So well done. So who have we got this week? I missed it this week. You got to do this on your own.
I did. I was flying solo. So we have a wonderful lady by the name of Asha Singh, and Asha and I met this summer in Göttingen in Germany, and we both do leader development and team coaching, and we are very much interested in the leadership circle as a particular tool, and we both studied it, qualified, certified, all those kinds of things.
Yes,
and where it's appropriate, we use it with clients. But I knew there was much more to her than that, because when we were chatting in the breaks and we got to know each other a bit, she just struck me as this worldly other being that had a range of experience and an outlook that really fit what we're all about, or what we're trying to do here is bringing interesting people with interesting stories. And we're currently doing a little bit of work together, shaping a couple of things. And I just happened to mention, do you fancy coming on? I think you'd be great. She jumped at it. So Asha's wonderful. She lives in Milan, and her mum's still over here, and so she flits about a lot and does a lot of work. But
and boy, can she sing!
Oh yeah.
I went investigating, and Asha, if you're watching, what a lovely voice you have. Lovely voice.
She'll appreciate that.
Yeah.
Good.
So we'll do what we did before. We'll run the VT.
Run VT.
And if you don't mind, either you wave at me in the background, or I'll wave it, or I'll pause it, and we'll have a chat about it. But it's about 50 minutes, a good length of a conversation. But we can dip in and out, I think, and interrupt Asha and you as you speak. The wonders of new technology, mate. So
you drive.
Will we do it?
Yeah.
Right. Let's do this. Let's do this on. Right.
Let's go.
It's going to be quite odd seeing yourself on the screen here.
Asha, I'm getting used to it. Day to you. How are you? It's great to see you.
Thank you. Likewise. I'm doing well, thank you. It's the end of another busy week, and I'm looking forward to I've got a 4:30 a.m. pickup for the airport on Sunday morning.
And where are you off to?
So I'm going back home to Italy. I've been in London for in the UK for about 10 days work and family stuff and whatever. So I'm going home.
Looking forward to it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And your home is Milan, yes?
Yes, exactly.
It's a
That's my base.
Beautiful city. Are you in the centre, or are you around the edges?
We're quite close to the centre, actually. About 15 minutes walk from Piazza Duomo, where the cathedral is, which is kind of generally considered to be the centre, and close to the airport. So got a really good mix. It is a beautiful city, and in a very spoiled way, quite frankly, as an honorary Italian, it's not beautiful compared to many other places, but we love it because it's really accessible. We're close to the mountains, we're close to the sea, we've got loads of amazing art around us. The weather is something that's a bit more challenging. It's a bit like being in Bangkok in the summer without any of the benefits. It just gets really, really hot and sticky. But, then we can get out of town, and if you don't mind the traffic, you can be in somewhere beautiful fairly quickly, which is great.
That's true. I remember always I used to work a lot in Switzerland, in Vevey, and you take the train from Geneva, and it was always the Milan Express rather than the sort of the local trains. And took the local trains occasionally if I didn't want to sort of rush the journey down
potter around,
just potter along. But no, the Express. So, but never finished the journey all the way to Milan. But I've been several times.
You need to come over then.
Invitation accepted. Thank you.
Great. Look forward to it.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, we met this summer in Germany, in Göttingen, at the Leadership Circle Summer Gathering. And a great conversation was started. So thank you for coming on Artifact Live. But tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you. So also for the invitation to be here. So I guess I'll start with what I do, because that's probably of interest to some of the people listening. So I work as a consultant, a coach and a facilitator. I love to work with senior leadership teams in particular, because I think there is often a real need to think about things in quite some depth. I really like to do that. And then I suppose also the freedom and the space to play and make some choices about what can happen next. So I'm also an artist. I use that word lightly. I still find that quite difficult to say that about myself, but I'm finding it or getting better at it, let's say. So I love to sculpt, and I'd also really like to get more into performance work and bring that into my professional activities, if you like, because I think the body is a really powerful way to learn and experiment with all kinds of things. It doesn't lie. Our heads and our behaviors and all the things that make us human can tell us lots of stories that may or may not be true, but the body tends to, in my experience at least, just kind of cut through all of that and say yes or no, this works, that doesn't work. And so I like to think about a team or an organizer department or an organization as a body. It's an energetic body of relationships, of parts that move and interact with each other. And so that's a really kind of curious area of experimentation, exploration for me.
And what medium do you sculpt in? Many or one or?
So I think it's fair to say that sculptors fall into two kind of camps. They're either modelers, so they create something from nothing, or they are chippers, so they reveal something different, beautiful, whatever, powerful from something which is already existing. So stone or whatever. So I, at least for now, kind of feel very much at home in the first camp. So I like to model. So it makes sense that I use clay at least to start with. And then perhaps, I make copies of, this is going to come into perhaps a conversation a bit later. I make copies of things and then I might use a completely different material or experiment with stuff or whatever. But it's basically that idea that I start with nothing and I make something and I try to make something beautiful.
Well, I'm sure they are beautiful. And have you had an exhibition yet?
I haven't. That's why I say I'm working up to it. I have had some things in public, but I wouldn't really call it an exhibition. I think there's a certain energy that you put into your creative expression, and it just depends what you want to do with it. So I think I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a minute anyway. But for me, it's really about exploring ideas and taking them out into the world and learning from them. And when I have, does that make sense? So when I have a collection of things that I feel might make significant sense to others, then it will be the time for a show.
And are there any particular themes that are present for you?
Yes and no, if that makes any sense. So the way that my personal creative process works is that I get an idea that's, I guess, generally stimulated by something external, or at least it feels that way, and something starts to kind of arise within that says, I want to think about this or explore that or whatever. So in the past it's been I suppose on the kind of outer level of things, it's been about experimenting with techniques and materials and what you can do and what works and what creates beauty or is expressive or whatever, and what isn't. So kind of learning the craft in that way, but exploring an idea that has come from inside, and those themes have changed. So a few years ago, it was about making sculptures of people that were significant to me in some way, and then possibly sharing them with those people when it felt right. Now it's a bit more about energies that I think need to be expressed more in the world. So I'm currently working on a pair of dancing feet and clicking fingers, which are quite difficult technically. And I just want to bring that kind of quality of playfulness into everything that I do.
And is that something you see that we need in the world? Is this playfulness and this dancing? And what sort of led you to arrive there? Because it sounds like, you know, I mean, consulting's a very serious business at sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
So I'm sort of interested in the trajectory that sort of where you started, where you are now, and where you're headed in terms of not just your artwork, but sort of more generally.
So you know, I think the last few years in particular, not only, but I guess it's been such a drastic pause, let's say, for many of us. And there's some pretty serious stuff going on in the world that we may or may not pay attention to, you know, depending on what's our focus and stuff. I personally made the choice when lockdown started. So I was in France, actually, when things started to go a bit crazy in the north of Italy. And I had to get home fairly quickly, although I remember my husband saying, don't come back, everything's going to go mad here. And I said, but, you know, I don't know how long it's going to last, so I would rather be at home. And then when, you know, Italy did the unthinkable for most kind of Western countries anyway, and said, you want me to stay in your house. And then, you know, it all got crazy, really. I made the conscious choice to stop for a while, stop my work. I didn't want to put my things online. I do not put them online for lots of reasons. Completely understand why people would have done, but I chose not to. And I wanted to just sort of stop and take a step back and try to understand what on earth was going on, why we got here. So I gave really about 18 months to doing that. I did a bit of work here and there, but I didn't, you know, I really kind of took a step out, took a real kind of break. I can't for 1 minute say I've got a complete picture of what's going on in the world. I haven't. You know, I don't think it's possible, but I have a good enough picture for myself to, you know, choose where it is I want to put my energy. And so to answer your question, you know, why the playfulness? Well, I think, you know, we all have to, and many people have gone through much harder times in recent years than I have, without any doubt. But, you know, in different ways, I think we've all experienced loss and, you know, loss of freedom, loss of loved ones. I mean, loss of, you know, all sorts of stuff. And so the playfulness, being able to be present with that loss, not to try and rush to, you know, get back to where we were or go to something dystopian or whatever. I think that playfulness is essential.
Yes.
You know, if I can be present with the challenges that I have in my own life and help other people to do that, I think playfulness, humor, a little bit of lightness, a bit of fun makes all the difference. And I really see that in my professional work, you know, with senior leadership teams. They have some serious stuff, you know, my clients have, and I'm sure yours as well, have, you know, some serious stuff that they have to deal with, and a lot of it's not very pleasant.
No.
And we're just putting a little bit of lightness and playfulness and experimentation into that to help everybody involved.
And are you seeing that makes a difference or produces particular shifts?
Absolutely. I mean, just last week, I was with a senior leadership team in a sector that's going to be quite radically different in the future and from what it's been in the past, with inevitable losses.
Yeah.
You know, that's a perceived experience, but many of us will perceive and experience it that way. So that's why I use that word. You know, whether that's loss of business, loss of jobs, loss of you know, space and freedom to do something new. I mean, all kinds of stuff. It's going to go through a radical restructure, and it's a very geopolitical one as well. So, you know, lots of constraints around it. This team have quite a big challenge in leading people through that evolution. And so we had a really playful, it was just one day, they didn't really have time for.
Just pause that there, Paul, for a minute and ask you, just we can build on it a wee bit. One of the things that I'm seeing a lot at the moment, and I don't know how to react to it, if I'm honest. People are saying, we have a new norm. People don't need to go into the office. People don't do this, don't do that. It's all about fun. It's all about love. Don't any companies that have been built on that successfully, and there's no evidence that any of this is going to work. What do you think of that? And you and I have worked on hundreds of companies, literally hundreds, haven't we? Have you one example where it was based on fun, apart from fun companies that do fun stuff? Is that it?
Yeah, so I was going to say, well,
Yeah.
Pixar would be top of my list.
Yeah, can you imagine? Can you imagine the Royal Marines being based on fun, or Marks and Spencers, or?
Well, Marks and Spencers, as you know, started in Leeds as a penny store on a wheelbarrow in a street in Leeds, and the way that started was like all market traders, hard work, whether it was sunshine, or snowing, or piddling with rain, then they were out selling their wares.
Yeah,
I think the challenge. I'd like to interpret fun as we need to rethink things differently.
Mm-hmm.
I think that might be a better way to frame it. I think what they're saying is that's not fun, which means it's problematic in a number of ways.
Yeah,
it's problematic because it's an extractive approach to life. We extract, we don't put back enough, although we're starting to learn the need to do that.
Yeah,
and if you look at Indigenous life, which is always held up as a rosy, romantic, do this. Well, I promise you, it wasn't. It probably wasn't as we like to think, as romantic.
Well, you died before you were 35.
Exactly. So if you want to go back to that, that's fine. Yeah. But I think like all these things, there are things to take from each. So it's not this or that. It's both and it's how do we do that?
That's an interesting way of doing it.
And consequently, I think fun is potentially a label we use to go, we don't like that, because it's you and I have worked for consulting companies where we've been burning the midnight oil to 3 a.m, or someone's been yelling at us to say, what do you mean you want to spend time with your family over the weekend? I need you to finish this bid because it's due on at 8:30 on Monday. You know that, and that's from consulting. But if you go to an Amazon, and I'm not picking on Amazon particularly, but you go to anyone that's doing that, everyone's fighting for survival right now, one way or another, and therefore. Yeah, there probably are parts of that art that aren't fun. So life isn't easy,
No.
And I'm not trying to pretend to be a Buddhist or anything, but life is life goes in waves. Sometimes there are moments that are highs, that are awesome, and there are other times that are just awful.
Yeah. So this is at the core of a lot of what I'm thinking about just now. I mean, I get concerned, and we'll need to go back to Asha, but. I get concerned though. I mean, when I was working, in consulting, that was brilliant fun. I mean, we worked really hard, but every one of us enjoyed it. It was a bit like there was the tread on the tire. There's only so much of that fun you could cope with.
Yes. Yeah. You needed sleep.
You needed to sleep occasionally, maybe once a week, but it was a brilliant experience. And I guess where I'm coming at, and I've seen some people like, Elon Musk is an outlier, but actually quite a lot of things he says is true. If you don't direct people, you get a circus. People are not historically good at self-direction. They're not good at and this is a really sweeping statement, I know it is, but well, just show me evidence, and at the moment there are companies, I think, being bullied by some of this language. Oh, you need to let me be at home so I can, be where I feel comfortable, and it's my safe space, and a lot of that language. None of it's proven. People talk about it as if we know that working from home creates as a productive business as it did before. We don't know that. Nobody knows that. They're all making it up. you know, and
I think
and
the
I
people
just worry.
commentating are there are some research studies that are beginning to surface
Yeah, but
both sides of
yeah,
the argument that says actually working in the office is a good thing in certain contexts for
yeah,
certain industry, and working at home for certain for screen based work in certain contexts can be a good
can
thing.
work.
It
Maybe.
can work. So
Yeah,
I think where we need to go to is this messy place,
yeah.
which is the both and. There's a really good Bruce Daisley's just done a podcast with Lloyd's Banking and their approach, and they've managed to somehow. I mean, I would have to talk to
Yeah.
their staff to say whether it works or not, but they seem to have found this approach that says if you want to work in the office, work in the office. You want to work at home, you work at home. Here's some guidelines and some guardrails as to what we prefer, but we leave it to you to make the right decision. Now, whether that's sort of got some leverage against it that says, and when it comes to performance review time, if you didn't play the game, then
Yeah.
that's going to come up against you, which is often what companies will use.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's clear cut, and I think this is what we need to challenge is this idea it's one or the other, or there's a shortcut, because
I agree. No, I do. I
because there
definitely
isn't.
hear that.
And I'd love to have some evidence, or at least begin to build a body of evidence that guides. It doesn't say, "Oh, well, that evidence is that, so it must be right." We're not dealing with sort of brain surgeon material where being out by a hair's breadth really, really, really matters.
Yes.
The level of standard error that we can accept has probably got a bit more tolerance in it. But I do think fun to me is actually we need to get into the messy stuff, because even when we were having great fun trolling all over the world and working with great companies on great projects, and we were knackered, but we were still doing good stuff.
Amazing. Yeah.
There was fun elements of that, and there were not fun elements of that.
Yeah.
So it's messy.
Yeah.
I'll stop.
I think the messy paradigm is good. Let's go back to Asha, but I think the messy idea is a good one, because chaos. You need chaos to get order, right? And we can get a philosophical conversation here, but we won't. But this is why I'm excited about the moment. But we do have, I reckon, a decade to redefine what organisations look like before the status quo pulls it back, to where it was before. But I guess my concern is there's an awful lot of very, very cultish, unproven, and quite frankly nonsense being spoken. And it's why I think actually ultimately about at the beginning of the end of the organisation, because I don't know if the public will be able to go back. And it doesn't really matter what people say. They've had a different experience, and people are now not interested in what the boss says.
No.
Power's gone. I mean, I'm talking very generally there, but it's only gone until the pound signs start to count.
That's the hook. As long as the flow of money continues in the way it does, as long as the way we continue to make laws stays as it is, then there will always be people upstream that throw people in the river and use money as the bait to do that. What we need to box clever about is to say, are there alternative, less extractive ways of living that suit some people but not everyone? Why can't things exist? And can we address the fact that there are finite limits to the resources we have on Earth, and therefore, there are limits to that, because otherwise we'll reach the point where we're on Easter Island. There's a last tree, and someone cuts it down, and everyone goes, "Oh shit, we shouldn't have done that."
Yeah. Well, we better put her back on.
Let's have Asha back.
But it's such an interesting concept. I really love it. Right, let's get Asha back on. Back on.
For more, it's quite short for me for a kind of team workshop, but. They were really playful in how they could deal with stuff, and they went away feeling really energized and aligned, and feeling much stronger relationships and trust just through some very simple moments and space to have fun together and get to understand what was really important for them as a group of people to go through those. So I think it's essential.
Yeah, I think it is. We have it knocked out of us so early in life if we're not too careful.
At times, to be serious, I wouldn't be playful if I had to make people redundant. I'd just be hugely disrespectful. But I can be playful in what helps me to walk into that situation and have an adult-to-adult conversation.
Yeah. Cool. So as you know, we like storytelling here. So I'm wondering, did you bring an object with you?
I did.
Oh, well, tell us, what have you got? Oh my goodness, what's
I'm not
that?
sure you can see that, but I've got my. I hope you can see that. So it's quite delicate.
Okay.
Can you? What does it look like to you? Can
Looks
you see
like
it?
a dental instrument, but
Yeah,
I can
doesn't
see there's some deposits on it. So I'm going to assume it's a tool for sculpting. Is that right?
Well, actually, you know what, Paul? I think it's both, and you've absolutely hit the nail on the head. So,
Okay.
it's a little scalpel. It's got a small pointed blade on one end, and then it's got, you know, a nice handle where you can hold it in different places. And then on the other end, it's got what looks like a little mirror, but tiny. I mean, it's not even 3 millimeters diameter. And I think it is a dental appliance.
Okay.
And I use it for sculpting.
Okay.
So the story.
So where did you get it from?
Yeah, great. So I got it from a good friend of mine who has been a teacher for me. He's a professional sculptor, and he's a really good teacher, craftsman. He can do all kinds of stuff. Who owns a studio in Milan where I work and teaches at the art academy there. And I've been with him, let's say, probably about 8 years now in different vestiges and places and whatever. And a few years ago, I don't remember exactly when, you know, doing the really delicate work on clay requires you to have a steady, we call it in Italian manuality, I guess you'd call it a steady hand in English, you know. So you have to be really delicate, you know, it's fine work, it's quite difficult, particularly for someone like me. You know, I'm quite a robust, let's call it, you know, physical body. I'm quite strong and powerful, and, you know, getting stuff done and all that very sort of what you might call masculine energy is something that I find very easy. You know, I can bring people together, I can do all sorts of stuff, but that very fine, delicate work that requires me to be really present and very gentle and slower in my movements is quite challenging for me. So my lovely friend Fahad gave me this tool some years ago when I was starting to have a steady enough hand to do that kind of work. Before that, he'd kind of added and done it for me. And we got to a point when he said, no, you know, now it's time for you. And he actually gave me, this was his tool.
Okay.
So it's significant for me, you know, for a number of reasons, partly because he was generous enough to just give it to me. I love the fact that it is, you know, it's made of stainless steel. It's quite small and delicate, but it's, you know, rock solid, and I could use it as a lethal weapon.
Yes, I'm glad I'm here right now.
Yeah, absolutely, keep away. But I use it for really fine, delicate work. So the complete opposite for me, anyway, of you know, that really strong, powerful energy that I just mentioned. So it's important to me because my friend gave it to me. It was his, and it was just a spontaneous, generous, here, you're ready for this. I can always get another one. I'm sure he hasn't got another one, actually, because I haven't seen him doing any sculpting for ages. So that makes me feel a bit guilty. But now, you know, it's just a really sweet thing to do. It's really helped my sculpting. You know, the quality of my craftsmanship and whatever. And it's also really encouraged me, prompted me to slow down when I'm doing that. So my best work comes when I'm really present. I'm not really thinking about anything. I'm in some kind of flow, which, you know, lots of people have talked about in different contexts and stuff. It allows me to, or helps me to do really fine, delicate work, which is the part that makes, you know, particularly if you're doing like a human bust, so that's the head and the first part of the torso, so a figure, you know, helps to make that human part really come alive. So it's really expressive. And it's made of a material that's, you know, almost unbreakable. And it could be used for something completely different. So I also really like the repurposing kind of aspect of it. That feels quite playful in itself. And my friend is very good at that. He takes all sorts of, for example, he uses paint, exterior paint for a building, and he uses it for sculpting.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So that's why I brought this along. It's multi-dimensional, let's say, and I love it.
So I'm wondering if that's translated outside of the sort of art studio. What have you sort of learnt that has sort of that yet filtered through?
Absolutely. So, I just touched on the fact of being quite strong and powerful, and that, qualities and energies that we often associate with being masculine.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not saying that I associate that with a gender, because we can all hold that. Men and women can both be strong and powerful and whatever. But there are, certain energies that we often think of as being that kind of association, let's say. So where this has been really interesting for me is my sculpture, not only, but, as we're on that theme, my creative work has helped me to really express parts of myself that have perhaps been, I wouldn't say kind of cancelled out feels too strong, just sort of put aside, if you like, almost kind of forgotten or not given precedence to, or whatever. I grew up in an Asian family. Well, my father was Asian, where very much the emphasis is on education. So you need to be really educated and do well to, be successful. And that's very much a kind of Asian quality. And it comes, I guess, partly from culture and partly just from the necessity that if you weren't educated, you were always going to be poor. So both my parents are immigrants, and, that was something that they shared. And so I guess, in a healthy way, we were encouraged to compete from very early on, as we are often in our society. And then to be very active in the world, to go out and do stuff and make your mark, and, make the most of, you're smiling, I guess, because it's probably so resonant for a lot of people now. And so my creative work, and of which this tool is a symbol, if you like, a totem, has really helped me to do other stuff. I've always been really into yoga and meditation, but I was always into the more active versions of it.
Of course.
But naturally, we go with the flow. And I started practicing yoga on a regular basis in my 20s, and I wanted to, look like a supermodel from California, and so I went for it. I didn't quite achieve that goal, but I was doing well anyway. Jokes apart. But then I also spent a bit of time in a Tibetan monastery in Scotland. So that was a very different kind of experience. And so these things, and then, that flowed into my artwork. If you're thinking about, how do these things connect, flowed into my creative practice. I suppose at some point I gave myself the permission that, it was all right to dedicate that time to me. It wasn't selfish. It wasn't anything else. I was going to have that space in my life that was about me exploring stuff. I'm very happy to share that with others. I guess it was a bit easier because I don't have children, so I didn't have that, those commitments and stuff. But I've seen more and more, as I get into my middle age. I think for a lot of women there is that, and maybe not only, but that's what I know better. A lot of that, inner pull to, I want time for myself. I want to be able to express myself. I don't want to go out, like the clappers and conquer the world. I've done that already, or not. I've done it in my own way. I don't really want to do that anymore, and so I want to express other qualities in myself. And so that has very much been my experience as well. And that comes more and more into my work. I can still be in very masculine, in terms of energy, environments, which I love. I thrive and I feel very much at ease in that, and whatever. And I can also bring a very different quality in. And I also see absolutely, a number of, recently in particular, just because that's what the work I've been doing, of men, so really senior male leaders, really embodying, really living qualities like being able to really listen, being humble, being empathetic, wanting to lift up their teams because they've already ticked off all the things that are important for them in their own career. And now, coming towards the later stages of that, wanting to really lift up everybody else which is fantastic, and I think so important, particularly with the challenges that many of us have today.
So one of the we're both great readers, and one of the things we connect on is sort of finding different ideas and sharing them and comparing and contrasting and having good old chin wags. The thing, one of the things we've been talking about is this idea from Giles Hutchins and Laura Storm about the idea of reconnecting masculine to feminine energy. So it sounds from what you're saying is you're starting to begin to see that, or are you saying that it's not really something that started, but it's already in flow, or are you seeing that it's just maybe an outlier just because of it's an outlier and it's just one of the things you've come across that sort of floated your boat, for want of an expression?
No, I think it's very much in flow and has been for me for a long time. I see around me and the kinds of work opportunities I'm attracting into my life, to use that expression, people that want to work with me are beginning to think about that more and more. They might not use that language, might not be thinking about it in that way, but they're definitely thinking about, okay, so I've tried certain things and they had certain results. What if I try something else? So there's that willingness and that openness, maybe because, what people have traditionally done or been rewarded for, or as what made them successful, or any of these kind of things are important, of course, to all of us, are changing or no longer working, or whatever it is, in a particular context for particular people. So I do feel that there is this flow towards, I'm going to use the word integration, because I think that's really what it's all about, or reconnection, whatever. It's that sort of, that's not an unfamiliar term to psychologists or people interested in that or whatever, but for those of us who are not particularly well informed in that area, I really like that idea of reconnection. So bringing these things together, whether it's masculine and feminine, whether it's us in nature, whether it's two sides of our brain, I think that's really familiar to lots of people. The rational, logical, you were joking about control and, earlier and stuff. There are things that really need that. If my child is about to run out in front of his car, I'm not going to be all empathetic and diplomatic and collaborative. I'm going to, scream my head off or throw myself in front of the car first or whatever. It's a completely instinctive reaction, isn't it? So who's to say that that's wrong? I think, insane to do anything else, really, personally. I think that how we choose to show up is very related to our context. And we have to try stuff out. So that's where that reconnection energy, that flow of energy towards that, how can I bring these things together and try something different, is really, really useful.
Yeah, there is a sense of the place we are navigating right now is we really don't know. And the truth is, we've never really known. It's just there's certain things that have become familiar to us, and this enforced and extended pause has given us the opportunity to sort of have the space to think about, well, is that really true, or was that really working? And therefore, if it's not,
I think there's another thing that I find has really helped me, and it helps people a lot when I share this idea. And it's nothing new; it's not my idea, but I think it's good to say it. We have grown up in a world where lots of different parties, in the sense of governments, business, all sorts of the organisations, the ways in which we organise ourselves, let's say, to have a healthy, flourishing society, have gone very much towards stability. So we need to have peace following war. We need to have stability, economic stability for growth, all these kind of things. Totally understandable and questionable about whether they're real or not, or sustainable or whatever. And I think, we can all see in different ways. It doesn't really matter what we think is going on in the world or why, or our political views or whatever. We've all had this big shake-up in one way or another, even if it's as simple as your kids. Simple, I'm sure it's not simple, but as daily, let's say, as your kids having to stay at home and not go to school. I don't mean that sounds like I'm being a bit dismissive. That's not what I want to be at all.
No, I hear you.
But, you know, that experience that many of us have had, that was just so bizarre from anything we've done before. So I think what the idea I want to share is that life isn't stable. It's always in flow. It's always in flux, even if that pace of speed of change is really slow. But, you know, lots of us have spent time in nature over the last few years just to get out of the house, to feel healthier, because, you know, we understood that sunlight was going to be helpful against the coronavirus and whatever reasons that we wanted to do it, time with our loved ones. And so the seasons are, you know, we experience the seasons all the time. Life is always changing. And if we can get a bit more comfortable with that idea that life is always changing, we might find things a lot easier.
I get a sense that when we start to do that, that there is a sense of energy, there's a sense of excitement, there's a sense of hope, and there's a sense of possibility.
Yeah, it's like freeing up energy, isn't it? I think you and I, you've often used the idea of oxygen. But we need oxygen to breathe. If all our energy is taken up in trying to keep things stable and controlling them, we've got no space, no energy, no oxygen to breathe and play with.
No, exactly. Exactly. I know we think along those lines. So sort of coming out of this period, a lot of us have changed our minds about certain things. And I'm wondering if there's one thing that you've changed your mind about recently, and if so, what is it and why?
Yeah, so I actually just made myself some notes to just kind of be clear.
Okay.
So I'm just going to refer to them for a moment, if you
Of
don't
course.
mind.
Not at all.
The thing I'd like to share, I think, and it's quite personal, but I think it might be really helpful for people listening as well. So I've often been really available for other people, very receptive to their needs. I've done a lot of nourishing and accommodating, quite honestly, you know, some behaviours that I certainly now wouldn't. And going back to the, you know, kind of masculine, feminine reconnection we were just talking about, you know, I think a lot of women have grown up thinking that's how we need to be. You know, we're socialised in that way that's what good girls do. And, you know, we then find that when we go into the world, some of those things are, of course, really helpful and good for everybody, and not always that good for us, in all honesty. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get a sense that, you know, there's a depletion of energy and an exhaustion, having to live with this expectation that that's the role that is expected to play on both sides of the gender and energetic spectrum.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, when we can get past that, there's a whole load of energy that we just touched on available. So,
and I think that's really exciting because I think one of the things we get attached to is this idea that the energy is attached to a gender. You know, masculine energy is because you're a man, and female energy is
not at all.
And that's not the case at all. There's lots of women with plenty of that good, solid drive energy, you know, which gets misnamed and labeled, and then, you know, it's like, get back in your box. And it's like, no. We need that diversity brought to the table. And similarly, you know, the male, less so. I'm getting a sense less so these days. But again, you don't really know because you haven't got a sort of pure sample to be able to say, well, you know, statistically it says this is right. So it's just a sense of, and maybe it's because of what I'm reading and because of perhaps a little bit of what I'm putting into the world as well. But this idea that sort of reconciling the feminine part of the male and starting to get comfortable with what that brings to the table and how that then enables us to talk to and start to address some of the big challenges that we've got right now that need a different approach and need us all, you know, to address them, because the scale of it's huge. So I'm really excited by, you know, what you're saying.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Tell us your favorite story. And I know you'll probably have, like most guests, everyone says, oh, I've got loads of favorite stories, how do I choose? So which one have you picked?
Yeah, so I've chosen one that just came to mind the other day because I responded to a thread on LinkedIn. I think you worked on it as well, actually, Paul, in which the author used a clip from the film Margin Call.
Yes.
Where do you remember the one? Yeah, so where
Jeremy Irons. Yes.
Yeah, love him. He's a CEO of a Wall Street investment bank who, of course, has not got a name. At the beginning of the financial crisis, explaining that in the clip, explaining the thinking and the choices that led him to essentially enable what looks like being a major meltdown for the bank. Now, my story is not about the bank or any of that, but that I question that. I think you as well question some of the ethics of that kind of leadership. Evidently from where we sit in this thread, and so it just got me thinking about Jeremy Irons actually, and about wholeness. Because I think what we're really talking about in this kind of reconnecting and bringing things together, that sort of integration idea. So that we can address, the things that are affecting all of us, and the fact that we all need to be, involved in different ways, is all about wholeness. I'm going to put that kind of word on it. So the story is this. I just mentioned before about, making sculptures of people that were significant to me for different reasons, and then also making copies of it. So a few years ago, I started to make a series of busts. So that's a sculpture of a head and the first part of the torso, of people that were meaningful to me for some reason, or when you think, oh, why on earth would Jeremy Irons be meaningful to you? But I'll go into that in a minute. So as I said, this is a way for me, creative work like this is a way for me to explore an idea that just emerges spontaneously. There's no particular reason for it, but it sort of keeps making itself heard and saying, do this, do that, whatever. So why Jeremy Irons? Well, I've always admired that kind of intensity as an actor in that clip. I think in that thread on LinkedIn, really kind of embodied that. And I've been quite moved by some of his performances, particularly on stage, which I've seen a couple. There were a series of strange coincidences I'm not going to go into because they just involve people that I know and whatever. And I felt that I wanted to play with some kind of idea in clay following these coincidences, even if I wasn't particularly sure, what it was I was playing with or why. So I thought, okay, I'm going to make a bust. Obviously, I don't know. Well, I didn't know the man, and it's quite a challenge to make a bust out of someone from pictures rather than modeling in real life.
Oh, I didn't know
at
that.
least having some kind of experience of the person in real life. And it was also a really strange experience to focus for quite an extended period of time, various months. I can't remember how long it took me. I wasn't working on it every day, but several months. So to focus on the face of someone who's famous and familiar because they're famous, but you don't know them, and you're looking at them every day from different angles. It's quite a kind of intimate sort of experience, actually. So it was a really good technical exercise. Particularly, he's got quite strong accentuated features, and the pictures I was using, he had a beard, so my little tool was really useful for that. Anyway, I was coming towards the sculpture, the end of making this sculpture, and the same friend who gave me the scalpel said to me, well, why don't you make a copy of the original? Tommy and I should keep the original in the clay. Why don't you make a copy of it and give it to Jeremy? And I was like, what? Get real. Why on earth would Jeremy Irons want to have anything, why would he be interested? Or, this what we like to call the inner saboteur just kind of went crazy and said, get over yourself, basically. And my friend, just very sweetly, a smart guy that he is, gently reminded me of some of these strange coincidences that happened, with Jeremy, because we just knew a few people in common and stuff. And just to kind of keep on with the creative process. And also that any piece of art, any creative work, let's say, will take on a life of its own once you've stopped working on it, and that it would find its way to Jeremy all by itself. I was like, yeah, whatever.
I was going to say,
Anyway,
okay. Keep going.
Whatever. Okay, let's just go with the flow and say. So I was also, trying to go with the flow and just see what happened and not need to control stuff, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, actually, more than anything else, I'll do it as a technical exercise, because I need to make a mold to make a copy, and I'm going to use a different material, which is a resin that I'd never used before. And so, because it's much lighter than clay, I was not going to make something that was clay and take it to a different country. And I've never done those before on my own for my own work. So, it was a good exercise. And then as I was doing it, thanks to my wise friend, the seed of an idea began to form in my mind and would not let me go. It just kept on growing, that I would invite Jeremy into a conversation about really some of the things you and I've just been talking about. Okay. So about the body as a vehicle for expression and learning, because he has a really strong physical presence, which is evident in his films, and even more so when you see him on the stage. And it seems to be a key element, let's say, of his power and impact of his, what we might call charisma as an actor. Mm-hmm. So, it felt insane, but I thought, okay, well, this idea is forming, and it, wants to be expressed in some way. So I just got on with making a copy, and it was quite energizing because I was learning a lot. And then somewhere in that process, I was coming towards the end of making the copy, and it was going really well, and I really liked it, which doesn't always happen with my work. And I remember just really clearly, there was literally like this bell. There was nobody there in the room. Maybe Farad was there, I don't remember. But there was nobody else there. We were just working quietly on our own stuff in the studio. And there was this, like a bell, it was so clear, this voice in my head saying, I belong in his study. I was like, okay, I'm losing the plot. So I need to go and see a psychiatrist or something. And it just spoke again and said, I will live in his study. And then it stopped. I thought, okay, whatever, just get on with the work. Don't do, just do it. So I finished it. And by the time I finished it, the invitation that I had to invite him into a conversation was much clearer on my mind, and even on paper, it got out. The words were on a page, let's say. And I really liked both the work and the invitation. Don't ask about the details of the invitation now, I can't remember. So I decided to just, say, okay, these strange coincidences have happened, this process has happened, and I'm going to give this present to him. I'm going to give this copy of the sculpture to him as a gift. Mm-hmm. So it was close to Christmas 2018, I think. So I made a really beautiful box with a sculpture inside and invitation next to it. I went to an event in London where he was taking part, and I think he was clearly not well that day. He was in a really foul mood. So if you should happen to hear this, I'm sorry, but I've got to share the story. You never know. Anyway, he was putting out an energy that made all my doubts rise up again. I thought, what the heck am I doing? Get over yourself. Just go and get a normal job like anybody else. Why do you have to try and step out into this, crazy space at the end of the day? But I calmed my nerves. I'd made quite a lot of effort up to now. And I think it was the next day, I knocked on the door of an assistant whom I knew, at least by name. And the look on her face when I explained why I was there just kind of said it all. And it's what I took it to mean. He isn't going to engage for reasons that have nothing to do with you. And you shouldn't have gone to all of this trouble. But she promised that she'd give it to him and that he'd be in touch with his response. So I went home. Christmas passed, and a few days later, I was back at 80. I think it was actually my birthday or the day after, and I was a little bit tipsy because I'd been out for a nice lunch. And I got a lovely email from him telling me how much he appreciated the gift, and just explaining why his performance commitments meant that he couldn't accept the invitation, even though he thought it was a really good idea. It was a nice, lovely no. Yeah. And I didn't expect anything else, but it was nice that he'd made the effort, and he felt that he should probably return the sculpture, even though he really liked it, because he couldn't, engage with me in the way that I asked. And I just wrote back and said, if you like it, you're very welcome to keep it, and if you don't, you can send it back to this address. Anyway, it never arrived, so I presumed that he liked it, and nice. It felt really good. I was like, whoa, ego boost. My sculpture is in Jeremy Irons has got a sculpture of mine. But then, a few months went by, and I just kept getting curious about what had happened to the sculpture. So it had left my studio or the studio where I was working. It had left my hands, and it'd taken on its own life. But I really wanted to know what that was. It's the first time I've ever kind of had that experience. So I contacted the assistant, but she couldn't let me know, and rightly so. She's not about to divulge something private
Of course not.
about her client, and rightly so. And life intervened once again, and it just gave me the opportunity, without really a lot of effort, to take part in a series of events with Jeremy, and to meet and have a few conversations. Just
Brilliant.
about whatever the event or what it was. So apart from that, it was of course terribly exciting and all the rest of it. I never actually had the courage to ask about the sculpture, and it wasn't appropriate. It was in talking with an event and talking with other people and PR people and whatever. So I just enjoyed the experience, the fun, the moments of engaging with someone I admired and laughing with and whatever. So fast forward to February 2020, so we're talking just, before COVID and everything went mad. And I was at a concert in Oxford. I happened to be in the area, and Jeremy was reading poetry at this concert. I thought, okay, well, great. I'll go along. Be a really nice event. Didn't really think anything more of it. His assistant was there, and she, waved me to come over and talk to him. And I felt really embarrassed. And there was, the inevitable little gaggle of groupies around him and whatever that always surrounds me. I was like, no, I really don't want to be part of that. And then life intervened again, and we happened to just walk out of the theatre side by side. He was talking to someone, but something must have been familiar about my face or whatever, because at a certain point outside the theatre, and I remember it was really cold, he came over to me and he said hello. So I asked, I thought, well, it's now or never, this might never happen again, so I'm going to ask him right now. So I asked him where the sculpture was, that I'd given him, and he looked a bit confused and said, I'd have to remind him, he was sorry, but I'd have to remind him which sculpture, because he had a few. And his assistant was near enough. I think she was actually jumping up and down because she was really excited. I think that, finally she'd recognized me, and that I'd got the opportunity to discover where the sculpture was. So she just, I don't think she shouted, but she certainly did it loudly and excitedly enough for everyone around us to hear. It's the one in your study. And I just, you can imagine my jaw just kind of hit the ground, and his face really lit up, bless him. And he tried to hug me, and I was like, no, everybody's watching. I was about as bright red as the scarf that I was wearing, I remember at the time, and everyone was looking at us. So we just moved a little bit away from him and just had a chat about the sculpture, And I asked him if he liked it, and he hugged me, which was very nice, and told me that he loved it. He made him smile every time he looked at it, and that's why it was in his study. And he seemed, he's an actor, and it might all have been a, whatever, but it was really sweet, whatever it was. And he seemed genuinely moved. He said that, nobody's ever done anything for him like that before. Everybody wants something. And I'd just given him a gift. And he said, I still feel bad. I think you should have it back. And I said, well, do you like it? And he said, I love it. And I said, well, then keep it. And I said, put yourself in my shoes. You are the person that you are. And of course, a lot of that is just a legend in our own minds. But okay, we're living that now. I'm living that legend right now. You like it and you want to keep it. I would call that a result. Put yourself see it from that side, from my shoes. And we both laughed. And then I thought, I've had enough of this now. I'm so super excited. I need to leave. So I walked off on cloud 9, as you can imagine. And I remember my face was burning, even though it was really cold. And he looked really curious as I walked away. And the joy, honestly, that I felt in that exchange, that felt really genuine, really kept me going through those dreadful weeks of COVID. First weeks of COVID, which were horrible in Milan. And quite frankly, for me anyway, all the nonsense that's come after it. I'd like to also just share, if I may, why I've chosen this story.
Yeah, please.
Rather than another one, because a number of people have reacted in ways that felt quite unkind or whatever when I've told it elsewhere. So I'm not sharing it to say, look at me, I met Jeremy Irons and he's got my sculpture in his study. That's a a little kind of cherry on the cake, if you want the nice thing, one of the expressions. I like the story because it helped me to experience directly, firsthand, the intuition when we listen to it, whatever you want to call it, but that voice that just said, this is where it needs to go. I'm going to call it intuition, without attachment to an outcome or how that outcome is reached, is a really powerful sense that we could all learn to develop and hone and use and trust far more than we commonly do. And amazing things can happen, because I could not really have planned any of that.
No, I get a sense that we're slightly misguided in that we think that it's our job to live life. And that is part of it. But there are times and occasions where life lives us if we let it. And actually, when we do, if you talk to any elite performer, any elite performance artist, anyone that's doing that, where they turn off their brain, the world of extreme sports is where I first came across it. But where that experience of just allowing, it's amazing what happens. And through my own martial art, I'm so excited for you, because it is a wonderful experience when you pay attention to it and allow it to happen. And I know genuinely that's why you've told the story. Yes, it's someone famous, and it's always great to meet. Well, no, it's not always great to meet our heroes. Actually, sometimes they surprise us in ways that we leave going, oh, that wasn't quite what I hoped it to be. But when it does happen and it all clicks and it just happens, and so I'm delighted for you. What a fantastic story. And the other thing is, it does help you cross the threshold of moving to that identity of I am an artist.
Yeah.
Which sometimes can be a difficult one to hold, because
absolutely.
Because it's that see me, don't see me. I want you to see me, but I don't want you to see me. And if we don't put that,
I think for me, it's. I think there's another bit that I wanted to share though. That's that. We can often experience a sort of sense of failure when things don't go the way that we might have wanted or anticipated or pushed for, or not even pushed for, just kind of gone with the flow. I think you were really just talking about flow there, which I think is such a powerful thing that we can encourage, let's say. So the failure bit obviously is Jeremy didn't engage in a conversation I wanted. I never expected he would, but I thought, if I don't ask, I'll never know. But the creative process of making that sculpture and engaging in the conversation that we did have, I made something that touched someone's heart. The fact that it happened to be Jeremy Irons is just a cherry on the icing. I've experienced similar joy and gratitude making things that have surprised and touched my family and friends. So, I made a sculpture for my mother that just left her gobsmacked, because she didn't expect it. She didn't, anyway, she sees herself in some of that sculpture, and it's powerful. And also, when I work with the leadership team, like the experience I just talked about earlier from last week, when a group of people suddenly see something or feel something or understand something that they didn't before, and you are the catalyst for that process of, I'm going to call it creative process for them, it's really, really rewarding. It's
almost priceless, isn't it?
It feels like a huge honor, quite honestly, to be able to do that, and we are absolutely just parts of that process. It doesn't happen. It's like a performance. The famous theatre director, I think it was Peter Brook, said, performance doesn't exist without the audience. So it's the interaction, even if it's as deceptively simple as watching a piece of theatre or a concert or a poetry reading or whatever on stage, even with just one person, with a soloist reading something or playing something, whatever. It's the participation of the audience, listening, watching, feeling, that makes a performance.
It does.
It does. And that's why that idea is, I think, it's so powerful to explore, and going back to the idea of flow, lots of people have talked and written about flow and tried to encourage it and scale it, God forbid, and whatever. And to me, it's really about being able to become present in the moment and listen to the whispers, nudges of life flowing through us, guiding us, directing us, moving us, whatever. So we can get clear on what's really important to us. I mean, I hear all sorts of things going on in my mind. I don't listen to them. Maybe I do need psychiatric help, but jokes apart, I think we all do. And then act on the opportunities that spontaneously present themselves, which feel in line with whatever is our purpose, what's important to us. We start to really kind of co-create with life in a way that's beautiful and natural and sustainable, and it's available to everybody.
It is. What a beautiful place to sort of land our conversation today, Asha. That was lovely. If people want to find out more about you, where is the best place for them to go and connect, look at your work, talk to you?
Great. Probably the easiest place to start with is on LinkedIn. If they look for Asha Singh, Singh, and Learning Through Doing, they'll find me.
Okay.
All my online communications need updating, and I hope to do that in the next few weeks. I'm going in a slightly different direction, but people definitely get a flavour for that. They can also look at my website. Again, it's going to change, but they'll still get a flavour for it, which is www.learningthroughdoing.com.
Okay.
And that's probably a good place to start, and they'll find my contact details on there.
Well, what a lovely, lovely conversation. And I've thoroughly enjoyed listening to your stories. And I know our audience are going to enjoy them very much. So, Asha, thank you so much for being with us today on Artefact Live.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Wow. That's a good story.
It's a good one, isn't it?
Yeah, lovely story. And I get the real impression from Asha that there was a genuineness about her intention as well, which I really liked.
I don't know about you, but I've always done that. I've had the experience of sort of being the fanboy and going, hanging around, and maybe not, or just being irritating.
Yes.
But I got a different sense from Asha, as you say, that there was something much more to it. And even if it was post-rationalizing, well, this is about intuition and allowing intuition, doesn't really matter. I think to land there is a great place.
That was really good. It was really good. I'd like to talk to her more about that, because I suspect there's a whole load more. I mean, she's got quite a lovely balance to the way she thinks as well, hasn't she? The way she tells stories is very balanced. She knows when she's gone off piste, and she brings herself back, and it was really nice to listen to her. She'd be good fun in the pub, I suspect, having a drink with her in a chat.
Yeah, and I think she's a great example of being willing to entertain maybe slightly more outlandish, less grounded ideas, with a sense of reality and realism that doesn't dismiss them, but accepts where they are now. They're down a chasm somewhere, and we haven't been able to shine enough light on it yet for us to say, oh well, there's no need to be so modest. Actually, it's accepted wisdom. So I really like that. That spirit.
And all things being equal, when we have Thomas on next week from Lego, I think we need to share some of that with him, because obviously he's going to talk about play.
Brilliant.
It's a really nice little set, these last 2 or 3, actually, if they all come together, everything being equal.
Well, maybe we should allow intuition to play its part and see what
exactly
happens.
Yes, exactly. So, Asha, if you're watching, thank you very much. And I've already connected with Asha on LinkedIn and stuff, and she's
great. Good. Yeah, I know she wants another chat specifically with you. So, I think that pub thing might happen sooner than you think.
Might be a good thing. So everybody, thank you very much for tuning in. As I say it nearly every week, but that sort of story is something that, and the way that Asha and Paul really beautifully helped her bring it through, it's something that you should be looking out for, because I really do believe that if you spot the story, it can be something that can change the world. So thanks again, Paul, for that interview with Asha. It was brilliant. And thanks, Asha, for coming on. I'm annoyed I missed it. I'm gonna, yeah.
Right.
But so thanks, everybody. You've been watching Artefact Live with me, Scott MacArthur.
Yes, and me, Paul Crick. Thank you.
And we'll be back again, same time, same place next week. And we have a replay on a Saturday. I'm playing with the times a little bit just now, because we've got some American audience contributions that are suggesting I should put on a bit later on a Saturday. So I did play it at 6 o'clock UK time last week, and that went down quite well, Paul.
Okay,
so,
great.
So I might change the time, but I haven't thought it right through yet, to be honest. So,
okay.
Anyway, good to speak to you. Thanks for
to you
tuning
too.
in, and I'll see you next week, my friend. Cheers.
All right, Scott. Thanks a lot.